Hello, this is Professor Bustillo-Booth. This is part 2 of the video tutorial for the Secret Shopper project for Business 101, Introduction to Business. In the last installation, we discussed the learning outcomes, and I'll just briefly go over it here, as well as the multi-stage development of this project. I also went over the role of peer review, so we'll briefly discuss it here or remind you of its value. And then we'll dive into the assignments for Project 1D and Project 1E. Again, the learning outcomes is to create a marketing strategy given your observations to the secret shopper activity. And you're using a variety of information to inform your findings so that you can appreciate what the importance of small businesses in our free enterprise system. Again, this is a multi-phase project, and we have gone over Project 1A, 1B, and 1C in the previous tutorial, so I will not go over it here. And for this particular installation, I will focus in on Project 1D and Project 1E. Again, this is a multi-stage development, and you've gone through Project 1A and Project 1B, as well as Project 1C. Now, these steps help develop your understanding of the business and in the industry in which the business resides. And we are now moving forward to Project 1D and 1E. And so you've got an understanding of the business through this particular step. And then you develop project prompts, secret shopper prompts, which then you use to observe. And now your observations and particularly your notes are going to help you develop findings and recommendations, as well as make sure that by the time you get to the final stage, you have plenty of information to work with. Now, let me go over some very specific expectations for Project 1D. It is very important that you turn in Project 1C with Project 1D for reference. And I'll show you how to do that here in a moment. If you fail to do that, you will lose 10 points. That is, for this particular installation, for this particular stage, this project is worth 30 points. If you don't turn in Project 1C with Project 1D, you will lose those 10 points, and you're basically starting at 20 points. The second expectation is that you will draft at least 3 findings and recommendations for each observed category. Again, I will show you how in a moment. You'll want to complete the rest of the form and include any draft of extra credit observations, findings, and recommendations. So if you watch more than one location of the same business, you'll want to make sure that that information is in Project 1C as well as in the findings and recommendations. Project 1E is much the same, only you are basically turning in a final product. Again, you want to turn in Project 1C with Project 1E for reference, and I'll show you why that's important here in a moment. If you fail to do that, you'll also lose 10 points. And so for Project 1E, it is worth 50 points. So if you don't turn in Project 1C, you just automatically lose 10 points. Please don't do that. That's a lot of points to lose for such an easy thing to do. All right, and then you want to finalize all findings and recommendations for each observed category. You would have completed all the other form areas anyway, so this should be done. And then you'll want to finalize and refine your document given your peer reviews. Now, a note on this. Your peer reviews are going to show up before my assessments. Please do not wait for my assessments, okay? Because you only really have 1 week left to do this after you turn in the document. So you'll want to use your peer reviews as a sense of where you need to go. And then when you get my assessments, you can refine it further. But do not wait for mine. I do give a bit of weight for your peer reviews. And then, of course, you want to finalize any other observations you might have of extra locations, as well as include findings and recommendations. And they need to be in final form. A word on the role of peer reviews. You will also be given, for each of the remaining stages, 3 peer submissions to anonymously review. You'll want to use the rubric that is available online to get this done. You will also have 3 days to complete, as before, the 3 reviews, and will lose 1 point per missing review. Please don't do that. Every point does count. And again, the intent is to help your peers improve their product as well as expose you to quality work so that you can improve your own. Now we are going to go into modules so you can see what we're, where this particular project assignments are. And I am now in instructional view. And again, these menu items are not available to you. It just makes it easier for me to navigate if I'm using my particular navigation capacity. And so for project 1D, you'll want to go into week 10. If you are in another class of mine, it may not be in week 10. But the idea here is for you to scroll down and find where these assignments are. Do not wait for this to show up on Canvas. You need to be proactive and find out where these assignments are and when they are due. So as you can see here, this is project 1D, and I'll click it now. And if you expand the assignment, you'll find that the directions are here. Please don't skip over the instructions. I trust you to read and carefully look over the instructions. I'll make it larger here so you can see it. And they are designed to be helpful to you, so just follow the instructions and you should be fine, right? And so, for example, under task, it says draft at least 3 findings and corresponding 3 recommendations per category. What this means is that if you're going to, talk about 3 findings, your recommendations have to be about these 3 findings, okay? And you will use this form, which I will launch here for in a moment. And you'll find here highlighted the fact that if you do not include project 1C with project 1E, you will lose 10 points. So here's a friendly reminder to please do that. It's very, very easy to do, okay? And then the rest of the instructions will tell you what to do here, including the inclusion of extra credit assignments. Just so that you can see it now, be sure to look at the rubric for your own, not just for your peer review purposes, but for your own, so you can see how you will be graded. And you can see here, project 1C is present and complete. And then it's, the 10 points assignment and the quality of that project 1C. Because I'm basically, not making this a 0 or 10 because some of you have gone back to your project 1C to improve it. And so you have an opportunity to show that you've done that. Now, if yours was already perfect and great, you should just get a 10 here because it was perfect and great. Otherwise, your peer reviewer will look at that and make sure that it is present and complete. If it's not present, of course, it'll have 0 points. And if it's not complete, then it will be along the scale points that are provided here. Okay, and here are the other categories and criteria upon which your project will be reviewed. Okay, and so I will also show you here in modules where project 1E is. So you just go through week 11 and you'll find it here, project 1E. And again, if you're in a different class of mine, the due dates may be different. But again, the idea is for you to scroll and find where these things are, and so that you are acting proactively. And so you'll find that the task steps are basically the same, except that it has words like finalize and complete and the like. Okay. And so what I will do now is launch the document. Okay, I've already launched it here so you can see it. So here's the document that I've launched that you will be working with. You will find at the bottom that there are tabs, Project 1BC, Observation Template, Project 1, and the instructions, and then Project 1D, 1E, which is really your main document that you'll be working on, and then there will be instructions. And so you will find that this particular tab is basically the same that you've seen in the past. I just basically copy and pasted it here and the instructions that you've seen. Project 1D, 1E basically pulls everything together. And there are 4 sections. There is section A, which is the company information, B, which is an industry intelligence, including your own intelligence that you're bringing into the project. And then section C and D, C being the findings and D being the recommendations. And you'll find these are the same areas that you observed. And at the bottom is a reminder of what the Likert scale is that you used. Okay. And so as I scroll back here, some of these are pretty straightforward, so I won't go over them. You'll provide the information from the about the company, phone number, website, and so on. If you only observed one location, you'll just have one address. If you had multiple locations, you will include that here. And then the industry intelligence. In fact, let me go into the instructions so you can see what I'm looking for here. And so go to this tab to get some guidance as to what to provide in each of these cells. And so in the industry intelligence, you are basically going to refer back to your business analysis on Project 1A. If you need more information, then you need to do some internet search. Just make sure that you use credible sources as you, as you find quality and content to include here. And then for key industry trends that should have been in your Project 1A, and I'm only looking for 2. And pay attention to this particular prompt that says, what are the driving forces for the industry in which the business resides? What are key competitive considerations? And when I talk about driving forces for an industry, you want to really look at what is impacting the industry in which the business resides, okay? Because the business is within a greater market force, and it cannot necessarily affect that entire industry by itself. It is affected by the market forces in the industry. So for example, in retail, there is an expectation, and not just for retail, but for most businesses, that if you are going to be selling goods in a physical storefront, you ought to make those goods available in an e-commerce version. So you'll need to have a website and be able to maintain that and sell your goods there as well. So that's not only a trend, it's really an expectation. Another trend is that you need to, for retail, for example, is to figure out strategies to become Amazon proof. So if you're selling things in your stores and it is also available in Amazon, it is going to affect the competitiveness of the store, because Amazon being a marketplace of sellers, it is easy for customers to sort of compare and shop and then determine whether or not they're going to go into your store to buy, or go into your store to sort of treat it as a showroom so that they go home and then shop. So those are kind of important information to understand, right? And then in the customer insight, again, pay attention to these prompts. This was, in your Project 1A, you'll want to kind of put in, key demographic information, and that the business needs to be mindful of. So as a secret shopper, you really are observing within the context of what the customer's needs and wants are. So you'll want to articulate that here. In this area, it's pretty straightforward. You want to sort of provide a short verbiage about what you are observing and why you're observing. And then there is this language on how the particular secret shopper activity was conducted. I provided some verbiage here for you. Please do not just copy and paste what I wrote here or keep it. You want to use your own words. But basically, this is, what you want to include. Just use your own words, okay? Because it needs to be contextualized to your particular observation. Now, in Project 1, C and D, and remember in section C and D, you'll want to, again, pay attention to the instructions here on the side, your prompts. Now, I've given you in this gray letters, sort of a sense of what to write, right, or how to write it. And so, for example, if you look at my example for Project 1B and C, if you recall, I had said something for an observation like the parking lot is clean and free of debris. That was my prompt, right? And then I went and observed against that prompt. And in this case, I gave this location a 2, and then I put notes. The parking lot had a number of shopping carts in the stalls, making that spot unavailable unless the cart were, the cart was moved or the carts were moved. Okay. And then so if that had been, this is, and you copy and paste your 1C over here. And then so in this case, I'll want to have my findings, and it really needs to correlate and map back to, my numerical observation, how I assign my Likert scores as well as my notes. So I'm now providing a narrative of what I saw. So for example, here, the parking lot was poorly managed, right? And it was 2 out of 5 of the Likert scale. Remember, right here, I gave a 2. So now I'm going to say it was 2 out of 5 in the Likert scale. It had several shopping carts in stalls, making it difficult to find parking, especially during busy hours. And you'll find that's kind of what I said over here, right? Remember how important it was to write notes? This is going to be an easy exercise if you have written notes. Very difficult if you hadn't done it. So go back and write your notes down. All right. And so then you want to put recommendations that make sense against your finding, right? So in this case, I said, assign a staff member to check parking lot regularly every 30 minutes to ensure lot is free of carts and debris. Makes sense, right? Your recommendations map with your findings. And here's another example. So when I return back to what I'd written here, associates greeted me by this amount of time. That was my prompt, and then they greeted me within 5 minutes. That was my observation under the other column, because that's not a measurement against the Likert scale. And I gave that a 3. So, well, 5 minutes sounds reasonable. Why a 3? Well, because when my notes, I could see that there were 4 employees as I entered the store. 2 of them were chatting with each other, and one was, at the counter helping another customer. One was cleaning the display, and so on. Excuse me, it went a little too fast. And then one was cleaning displays and eventually said hello after 5 minutes. See, it doesn't really make any sense to just write a 3 without the verbiage that says why that was a 3, right? So then when you go into your observations, you can say, in this case, employee greeting was acceptable, 3 of 5, with 1 of 4 available employees greeting me within 5 minutes. Of note, 2 of the employees nearest to me were preoccupied with personal conversations. And so that's why I got to be a 3. So my recommendation here, establish a norm to greet customers within 3 minutes of entry, which is actually pretty reasonable. And at least 1 employee should be dedicated as greeter at the door. Again, it maps back in here, so then the store doesn't find itself, kind of wondering who is responsible for greeting. Had that been assigned to someone, that person now becomes the official greeter and accountable for making sure customers are welcomed as they enter. All right. And here are other examples in here, and you can read that at your own time. But again, be sure to tie your findings and recommendations to actual observations. These are not new. These are not, I'm going to repeat that again. These are not new. You are basically pulling together your observations into a narrative using the numbers, and there needs to be numbers in each one of these. Be very clear. Let me repeat that. Your Likert and or minutes and hours need to be in here, okay, because these are measurable observations, not generalities, okay, and that your recommendations need to map back to your findings. If they do not, then the recommendations are not meaningful. They are out of context. I know you understand that. I just want to remind you of it, okay? And so I just want to remind folks, speaking of reminding, that for project 1D, you need to do 3 at least of these findings and recommendations, a pair of them in each category. And that when you go to project 1D, sorry for moving this about quickly, you'll want to then finalize these three, giving your peer reviews, and then do the rest. So this needs to be a complete form, okay? And for each of these, they need to map back to each of the ones that you observed. Each one. See, there's 5 here. There need also be 5 here that are of the ones that you actually observed. These are not new, okay? They need to map back. And this is why it's so important for you to copy and paste your 1C along with your notes, so that people and myself, including myself, when we go and observe and assess your document, we're able to say, oh, okay, what you did here maps back and logically moves forward to what you're presenting here. Okay. And so I want to also be very clear that you are working in the template. This is the piece, this clean piece without all the directions is what you're turning in. I mean, you turn in the whole thing, and then when submit it to Canvas, all the pieces will show. But you are really turning it in, completing this particular template right here, and not this. These are your instructions, so keep that whole. Okay? All right. And so, again, copy and paste your 1C in this area, work on 1D and 1E here, and submit your documents to Canvas on time as an Excel spreadsheet. You do not need to turn them into a PDF unless you want to, but just an Excel spreadsheet actually, so that things, you know, maintain their the way you see it here. And then once you have submitted your work, make sure you go right into conducting your peer reviews by the due date, so you get full points. Now, if you have additional questions for me, please send me an email. I like to make sure that you are attended to. So if you're ever unclear, please reach out to me via email. I'm quite responsive, and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And I wish you luck. I hope you have a great time, you know, with your secret shopper activity, and that you've learned a lot through this activity. Thank you very much.